Hello, everyone. The United States Congress has just announced a new immigration reform law, a historic decision that could completely change the course of life for those who reside in this country. Stay until the end of this video, because we're going to tell you all the details of what is already being discussed in Washington. A piece of news that is making headlines in every corner of the country. That's right. The United States Congress announced today this new immigration reform that promises to bring an incredible change for all immigrants who want to stay and live and work legally in America. But watch out. Along with this announcement, a new rule was also revealed that will directly impact permanent residents. They must comply with this condition if they want to keep their green card valid. Pay close attention, friends, because what's happening today in Washington was on no one's radar. No one ever thought that the United States Congress would push so strongly toward an immigration reform, much less in the middle of the hardline policy that President Donald Trump has been enforcing since he returned to the White House this past January 20th. But the incredible has happened. Both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have come together in a completely unexpected way. And let's be clear, this is an unprecedented event in this country's political history. There was an overwhelming vote from both parties in favor of approving a new immigration reform that will directly impact the lives of millions of immigrants who have spent years fighting to stay in the United States, working, paying taxes, and waiting for a real chance to live in peace. Now then, what does this new law really mean? The first thing we must understand is that Congress and the President have made it clear that the absolute priority is American citizens. This means that under this reform, anyone who is not a citizen, regardless of whether they have permanent residency or any other immigration status, will simply be considered a foreigner. That's right, friends. Even those who hold a green card, that valuable document that allows you to live and work in this country, will be subject to much stricter conditions. The law practically puts them at the same level as other immigrants with temporary visas, international students, or workers with limited permits. In other words, even though permanent residents have rights, they will still be under the shadow of possible limitations and in certain cases may still face arrest and deportation. And here's a key point that is generating strong debate. The new immigration reform introduces radical changes in the deportation standards that existed until now. Before, a serious record or multiple offenses was required for someone with legal status to be at risk of being expelled from the country. But with this law, a single conviction for driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, a DUI, will be enough to open an immigration process that could end in deportation. Pay attention to this. It doesn't matter if the DUI is considered a misdemeanor under state, local, or tribal law. Under the new federal law, the simple admission of that conduct will be grounds for immediate immigration consequences. Experts and immigrant advocates warn that this will affect thousands of lawful permanent residents, international students, and other visa holders who at some point faced a case of this type. The message is clear. Congress seeks to toughen the rules for those who are not citizens, and at the same time show that despite opening up an immigration reform, the United States will continue to prioritize its internal security and respect for the law. Friends, pay attention to what I'm going to explain next, because here is one of the most delicate points of this entire new immigration reform. The law establishes that all non-citizens who are convicted or who even admit to having committed crimes related to driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs will be considered inadmissible and deportable. And this includes, listen carefully, those who have permanent residency, the holders of the famous green card. Here, it's important to make a key clarification. Many permanent residents believe that having a green card practically guarantees them a lifetime in this country. However, with this new law, that changes radically. If a permanent resident is arrested and convicted of a crime related to DUI, driving under the influence, the rule is clear. Their status will be automatically revoked. They will lose residency and they will be deported. The most serious part is that the law itself prohibits the possibility of ever being readmitted into the United States in the future. Now then, what specific changes does this legislation bring? There are two main pillars we must keep in mind. First, the law expands the grounds of inadmissibility within the United States Immigration Code. This means that any foreigner who has been convicted, who admits to having committed, or who even admits the basic elements of the crime of drunk driving, will automatically be considered inadmissible. In simple words, even if the person has not served a sentence, just admitting the act will be enough to close the door of entry to this country. The second change is just as severe. The law expands the grounds of deportation to include any foreigner convicted of such a crime, regardless of how it is classified at the local or state level. In practice, it doesn't really matter if a court considers it a misdemeanor or a felony. Under federal law, all DUI cases, well, they become triggers of a deportation process. The justification given by lawmakers is, honestly, quite clear. The dangerous behavior of undocumented immigrants and also those who have some status but are not citizens could, put American lives at risk by causing deaths or serious bodily injuries. That's why they argue this kind of conduct must have a direct weight on how immigration control resources are allocated. And there's something else marking a before and after in how cases are evaluated. The requirement of so-called good moral character for a foreigner to qualify for United States citizenship has always been about showing a clean and exemplary record. With this new law, driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs is no longer seen as a simple offense, but as a crime of such magnitude that it automatically invalidates that requirement. In other words, those who commit this type of act will not only lose the possibility of becoming citizens, but could also be expelled from the country without further legal alternatives. Friends, what we are witnessing with this new law is a historic and at the same time troubling change. The United States Congress, together with President Donald Trump, has decided to draw a very clear line. Only citizens will be fully protected. The rest of the immigrants, including permanent residents, will be under stricter rules than ever. This leaves us with a major lesson. No one is completely safe in this country unless they achieve citizenship. And now more than ever, the immigrant community must be aware that a mistake like driving under the influence can cost not only residency, but also the possibility of ever re-entering the United States. The new immigration reform opens opportunities for some, but also brings very serious warnings for everyone living without citizenship. The question that remains on the table is, will this be the start of a harsher immigration policy that will increasingly affect immigrants? Here at CEDA Consular HN News, we will continue to closely follow every detail, every update, and every move that happens out of Washington to keep you always informed. Friend, if this content has been useful to you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, share it with your family and friends, and turn on the notification bell. Your support is vital to continue bringing you the most important information about immigration and laws in the United States. We'll see you in the next opportunity with more breaking news that directly impacts the lives of our immigrant community. Please subscribe.